The story begins in a completely destroyed place, with the area heavily impacted by pollution. Some children are rummaging through things in the area when they notice something and come across a golem. The boy says he will give the thing that's in his hand, but in exchange, he wants food. There's a golem in Sector 50, but no one knows where it came from or who its owner is. What matters is that if you give it trash, it gives you food. The golem looks with its red eyes, standing still. Then it turns around and starts walking away. The boy asks where it's going because he took a lantern yesterday. So, as can be seen, it doesn't always work. The boy gets angry that it didn't accept and says he's going to beat it up. Your partner says that there have been incidents of golems walking the streets and eliminating people. Then a white-haired boy watches and quickly moves in front of the golem. He grabs his bag, full of old stuff, and hands it to the beast. The golem watches and grabs it, devouring everything. The children watch, surprised. Next, the golem hands the white-haired boy various foods. The children don't understand how he can get so much food all at once. And they comment that this amount would be enough for 3 days, and they think about going after him. But they are scared because it's the ghost of 17th Street. However, in Sector 50 and at the entrance of 17th Street, the ghost walks, but then stops and notices footsteps behind him. There are 7 people, and he tells them to show themselves and asks how long they're going to keep following him. The kids say that he has good instincts and that they were following him very carefully. The big guy has a brass knuckle in his hand. Ray replies that he warned him last time that if he showed up in front of him again, he would make sure he never walked again. Ron asks if he thought he was going to let him go like last time, and tells him to put the bag on the ground. If you do that, they'll let you go safely. The protagonist calls him a liar and says that he's lying and won't let him go that easily. He thinks there's a saying among the kids there. A ghost that lives on 17th Street. A white ghost that travels silently without expression. And don't look that ghost in the eyes, or your lies will be uncovered. Ron clenches his fist with the brass knuckles and runs towards him to attack, saying that he will make sure he can never speak again. The big guy tries to land a punch, but the ghost manages to dodge, putting his foot in front and making him fall, causing a big impact. Then, he pulls him and slams him against a wall. Again! Ron screams in pain, and his partners get worried and start cursing at him, telling him to grab a king. They get closer, running to hit him but without any difficulty at all. The protagonist dodges and hits them, causing injuries. Even so, he keeps hitting, making his opponent's injuries spray in his face after continuing to attack. Everyone is defeated, and the ghost says that bringing more people won't change anything. On the ground, he calls him a monster and gets scared. Noticing that he's getting closer, Ray says he warned him that he would make sure he never walked again. Ron is holding a knife behind his back and quickly stands up, showing the knife. The protagonist watches and thinks about the word monster and that it's true. He remembers when he was 10 years old, and around that time, he discovered that he was different from other people. Then he remembers when he was younger and his leg was hurt. The kids watched and asked if his leg wasn't hurting and why he wasn't crying. He wondered why he would cry from the pain. The kids said that he was attacked by the kids from 7th Street and asked why Ray wasn't angry. The ghost wondered why he would be angry and what it means to be angry. On another day, one of his friends was eliminated, and the kids, crying, were asking what they were going to do. They said that even so, the protagonist didn't shed a tear and there was something wrong with him, which was scary. So the kids left? Ray realized that he can't feel what other people call emotions, and he wonders if there's something wrong because he wants to be like everyone else. He wonders if he will ever learn what emotions are, and even now, after 6 years, he still doesn't feel emotions. But he knows how to read other people's emotions and says that not using a blade is an unspoken rule here. And he asks why his opponent brought this, and if he was planning to defeat him like that from the very beginning. He doesn't answer that he picked it up from the trash earlier and realizes it's a lie and thinks he managed to see just by looking at the color of the container inside his chest. And he can see a world that others can't. Everyone has a small container inside them, and when they feel emotions, certain colors of mana fill these containers. Emotions like anger, hatred, and love result in red mana. Scorn and apathy result in blue mana. Joy and excitement result in yellow mana, of her, and countless other colors, and her world is filled with colors. Rona points the knife and says that if he gets any closer, she will take him out. The ghost realizes there is a deep dark mana, And this is intense fear. He gets closer. And where is that? For him, he stops until he hits the wall and there's no way out. He gets really scared. The protagonist says that a liar like him deserves punishment. After a while, the king walks and it is raining when he enters the place. They call for him. And he comes across Pale, the leader of the children in the underground passage, who says that he arrived just in time. The children run to hug the ghost, but the leader tells them not to jump like that, because all at once, they get too heavy. They sit in a circle and say they are going to see what they earned today. They put all their earnings together. Pale wonders if they can divide this among 7 people. The protagonist watches. He grabs his backpack and hands it to them with all the food. People say he is amazing for having taken all this from the golem since they couldn't. Ray thinks this is because the golem only takes magical items with residual mana, and he won't be able to give anything if he can't see the mana. Pale says to divide the food and that, thanks to him, they won't starve. So they line up to get food, starting with the youngest. Meanwhile, the ghost steps outside and sits on the ground, watching the rain and thinking that there's never enough food for everyone. He wonders if he will have to go to the warehouse, and he has the duty to support this group because he owes his life to them. A year ago, he was between life and death, and the children noticed that there was someone buried in the snow and decided to help the protagonist. He thinks, did he really believe it would be okay if that was his end like that? The children noticed that he woke up and said, "Thank God you seem to be okay." And he got help. It wasn't his end. And there he is, still sitting, thinking that it's a start to pay off his debts, whether it's a favor or revenge. Until he hears someone calling him. Pale says he needs to get his share too. Ray replies that he's fine and not hungry. Pale sits next to him and says that his stomach seems to disagree with that. And he suggests they divide it. Then, the leader of the children cuts the food in half, hands one part over, and then asks if he can see that it's raining black. They say it's because the wizards use too much magic. And apparently, wizards live in areas with smaller numbers and are sure that the golem is something sent by the wizards too. The ghost replies that it could just be some kind of machine. Pale says no, and that he's sure it's magic that's keeping it moving. He observes. The protagonist thinks that actually he agrees with him, and when the golem moves, it draws mana from the surroundings into its core. So, it's a mixture inside him and expelled as black gas. Black rain and black gas. And he can't help but think that there's a connection between the two until someone calls him again. But he said, he's going outside, right? He asks if he's really going out in this rain and tells him to be careful with the river because it's dangerous. When it overflows, he says to wait, but there's no time. The ghost runs away. He sighs and comments that he just does whatever he wants. Elsewhere, the protagonist keeps running and thinking that when it rains, everyone goes inside to get away from the rain, and they believe that even a single drop of this black rain can make them sick. So he keeps running, thinking that he can protect himself from the rain and that this way he can work. It gets easier. On 18th Amam Street, at Hector Pamanco's feed warehouse, people are playing betting games. Ray listens from outside and thinks he knew that because they always bet when it rains. So he crouches to get inside and realizes that it's dark. There are hundreds of different types of mana in the air, and he draws specific colors from them and mixes according to the right formula. So, the red and yellow mana come together in his hand, creating a huge yellow mana. The ghost thinks that even though he doesn't know the exact principles, he can use this method well. And still, controlling the red mana is harder for some reason. But he believes that if he can fully understand the emotions tied to it, maybe he can create an even bigger fire. Until a knife suddenly comes close. He dodges but still gets grazed and looks around. A voice says that a little mouse has appeared and wonders if it was trying to steal their rations. The protagonist wonders if they had been hiding behind a pillar or a box from the very beginning. The guards say that he's hiding and that he can try as much as he wants. Ray realizes that there are 3 of them in the place, and they are able to know their exact position. And he thinks that he didn't expect them to have equipment like night vision goggles. The guards tell him to hide as much as he wants and that he's exactly where they want him. The guard raises his hand with the blade and tries to hit him. The ghost notices and dodges his hand, quickly, effortlessly. The guard is surprised to see the other one, Singa, telling him to aim properly. But the guard says there's something wrong with that kid. And then, when he realizes it, he's already being hit and defeated. The other guards ask how he can see them. The protagonist looks and realizes that they are furious and surprised. The guard says he doesn't have to act like a tough kid and moves in to attack, but gets attacked instead, first. Ray thinks that by reading the flow of mana from his opponent through his arteries, he can predict the next move. So, he dodges and strikes the guard, throwing him away. The other one can't believe what he's seeing, and when he realizes it, he's already being attacked and falls to the ground. And the three are defeated. Until another guard arrives, saying he came to check the situation because it was noisy. The ghost realizes that this guy is an executive from the Hector group. The man says it looks like all three brothers have been defeated. He looks annoyed, clenches his fist, and says it was for a little mouse. The protagonist thinks that he is as intimidating as the rumors say, and he needs to get out of there. So, he runs, clenches his fists, and hits him, but it doesn't even tickle. The executive tells him to dodge that. So, he tries to hit him, but Ray dodges, moving away. The guard says he's even fast. The ghost thinks that he's on another level, for sure. The executive moves in again to attack him. The protagonist thinks that instinctively he knows. Meanwhile, he dodges several attacks from the guard and thinks that he can't win against him face to face. The executive tries to hit him once more. Ray, after dodging, stares intently and thinks that he's going to look for openings. Then, he approaches with his hand, emitting a very strong fire mana and burns him. The guard grumbles in pain and realizes that the kid is no longer there and probably didn't go too far. He tells the guards to search everywhere. The ghost is hiding and thinks they are going to find him. Makes noise to the other side. The guards look and say that he's near the entrance and run in that direction immediately, while the protagonist manages to escape and flee. Do you think you raided the infamous warehouse? Hector Pimanco's group. He keeps running and thinks that they'll eliminate him if they find him. And he's not afraid of the end. But if he ends up getting eliminated, the kids won't last long. And he won't be able to pay his debts. The guards manage to find him. Ray realizes that they are getting closer to him and starts running, but he runs into a dead end. The guards say that he has nowhere else to go, and with knives in hand, they ask him to tell them what he stole before they hurt him. The ghost realizes that he doesn't see the executive and thinks that he can win. The guards immediately move in to attack him. The protagonist dodges and attacks them, inflicting serious wounds with his fire mana. The guards can't understand how he is so strong. Ray emits a strong mana from his hand and attacks them, managing to defeat them, until voices get closer, saying they heard a noise. The ghost thinks that it's not like he can use magic indefinitely. But that place, until the guards arrive at the location and realize that the boy is no longer there. Ray is hiding in the trash and notices that the footsteps are fading away and that they haven't found him there. He's going to stay hidden there tonight because if they follow him to the bridge, the kids will be in danger too. Meanwhile, it keeps raining, and he wonders when it will end. The next day, it's no longer raining. The ghost is still in the trash, and he thinks that he ended up falling asleep. He goes out and believes that no one should be around now, until a voice says that it found him. He comes across a guard who says it's a good thing he came back. The protagonist realizes that he is quite irritated by the color of the container and still hasn't fully recovered. The guard asks if he also has a sword and says that then he won't need to hold back. He moves in to attack, but Ray dodges. The guard watches furiously and tries to strike again. The ghost notices that he lost his balance. The guard, without thinking twice, moves in to stab him with the knife. Just as he's about to strike, after a while the birds fly away, and the protagonist has a wound on his face, but it's from his opponent. A man appears with a gun, saying that it was dangerous and seeming to know Ray. The man lights his cigarette and puts away the lighter. Niles, the boss of 17th Street, asks what all that mess is about in the morning. The ghost asks if someone called him, as he usually isn't awake at this time. Niles replies that he heard that Hector's guys were looking for him and asks if that's it. Everything inside his shirt was what he took from Hector. Calling him bold, the protagonist thanks him, but the man says it wasn't a compliment. He replies that it was really difficult and asks if Niles knew. He thinks that people like Niles are hard to deal with. And there are some, like him, people whose emotions are monotonous and whose container never was. It never gets completely filled. The boss says that at this rate, he's going to be eliminated and that there are certain people you can't mess with. Ray responds that if they don't do this, everyone will be eliminated. Nelios says that now he has paid the debt for being saved. The protagonist responds that he fished him out of the river because he thought it was supplies, not with the intention of helping. The boss says that even so, he ended up surviving because of that. Ray responds that he has already paid for all of that. A year ago, he ended up pulling Niles out of the river. He apparently used to be an executive at 46th Sector, but was betrayed, and the protagonist doesn't think he's lying about it. The fighting lessons he gave as payment were very well structured. So, he talks about what was mentioned earlier. The boss puts out the cigarette and asks what he's talking about. The ghost says it's about joining the organization and warns that he's going to join his thinking that if he does this, the kids are safe. Niles looks, walks, and lights another cigarette. He asks if Ray knows how to use magic. The protagonist is startled and asks how he knows about that. The boss responds that he thought he had seen wrong when he lit the fire without matches, and he asks again what he knows about magic. Niles explains that there are just a few things he heard from a wizard in his previous organization, like the fact that there's mana in the air, which is used for magic, and that only a few people can detect and use it. Ray asks if he said anything about core. The boss responds that no, and they only said that you can't see mana. The ghost wonders what he's seeing then and questions if that was everything or if he forgot something. Nilos asks if he wants to get hit. So, he tries to hit him, but the protagonist dodges and asks what his answer is to his request. He replies that no. Ray asks why he's being rejected all of a sudden. The boss looks thoughtful, saying that all the sectors are adjacent to the Elton River. If he goes up the river, he can reach other sectors and probably get out of the sewers and live a better life. It would be such a waste, a kid with so many skills getting eliminated there. He asks if Ray has ever thought about leaving the 50th sector and says he can even get a car for him. The ghost replies that no, because he knows he takes care of some kids there. Niles tells him not to worry about it, because he's thinking of setting up an orphanage and taking in orphans like him from the streets. The protagonist notices that Niles' colors are soft and that it's hard to tell if he's telling the truth, but probably yes, since he has always kept his word. Niles tells him to be careful because Hector seems to be preparing for war and has received trucks full of weapons. The boss replies that he already knows. Ray thinks that the use of ammunition in any conflict is a definitive declaration of war, and he comments that the people in the shops will suffer if he loses. He also mentions that he thought the protection fees of his organization were reasonable. The boss replies that they only seem that way because there are worse people than him, and he tells Ray to stop treating him like he's so old because he's not even married yet. The ghost replies that he is old. Niles tries to hit him again, but he dodges. Then a car arrives and someone warns that they need to go. The boss gets into the car and says that this is going to turn into a war zone, so he recommends that they find a hiding place if they can. He throws something to Ray, who catches it, opens his hand, and doesn't quite understand. Niles tells him to clean his ear and drives off. Ray watches. On 17th Street, near the central square, a child notices that he is getting closer, and he gets up and asks why he didn't come back yesterday. And why are you so hurt? And who did this to you? The ghost replies that he just fell. The child starts to cry and says that it must have hurt a lot. The protagonist thinks that one person can feel so many emotions at the same time and tells him to grab the cans and go to Zenda and tell the leader that you'll be back soon. So, the child leaves with the cans. Ray asks if the lady told Josephine anything. Viola only realizes it's him when she hears him and replies that she was talking about the rainbow. The ghost tells not to mention this to the kids because they won't get used to the streets if they keep hearing fantasies. She asks who will keep the fantasies alive if not the children. The protagonist looks at her and wonders, what emotion is this? A purple mana that she's never seen in anyone else, besides herself. And he says that she should move to the other street because a war is going to happen there. The lady thinks he is a kind child. The next morning, Ray is knocking on a door, saying it's a delivery. The man opens the door and says that Ron was talking about how he was going to handle the deliveries from now on. And he asks if it's for real and thinks that Ron won't be coming around for a long time since both his legs are broken. And he asks if he's not going to evacuate too, since he won't be getting any customers. If a war starts there, the owner asks where he would go if he left his shop. He would leave his shop and say, the war might not happen. The ghost asks what he means by that. The merchant points his finger at the door and says that the two opponents are talking over there. And if things go well, there won't be any war. until the door opens and Hector and his team come out. Hector asks if there's a boy working where all the adults have gone. He approaches the boy and tells him to have a good job because that's how you improve your life in this world. He leaves some coins and tells him to use it to buy something for himself and then leaves the store. Until one of them looks back and notices the boy's injured ear. The bald guy keeps staring. The protagonist pulls his hood up and notices that he recognized him. The executive keeps looking. Until Hector asks what he's doing standing there. He replies that he's on his way. The merchant goes outside and realizes that finally they have left. As Ray notices that he recognized the injury on the ear and wonders why he left without saying anything. The owner goes up to Niles and asks what happened, looking scared to see him. The boss replies that the negotiation has failed and there will be war. The merchant, scared, asks if it's for real. Niles replies that he can't accept ridiculous terms regarding the organization's assimilation, and this is the possible outcome. He replies that it's not his fault, and that he won't be able to open the store for a while, and that the boy doesn't leave the hiding place. For now, the door is knocked. Ray walks away and thinks that he won't be able to walk around if the war happens, and he needs to stock up on as much food as possible before that. Then a car passes by, and he notices it's the bald guy and thinks he hasn't seen a car like that in Sector 50, and that's suspicious and needs to be investigated. On April 18th Street, at Hector's group's entrance, the ghost is hiding behind some bushes and asks who that is. Hector opens the door and says they were waiting. The person gets out of the car, and Hector says he will take him inside and calls him a wizard. Meanwhile, the protagonist is hiding and wonders who that is, and notices a dark blue mana, almost black. It's a ridiculous amount of mana, and it looks like the mana from the golems, and he wonders what those rings are because they also have a lot of mana in them. It's like he's using the rings to prevent the mana from leaking, and that this man is dangerous and needs to be reported to the boss. In another location, the men are unloading the weapons from the truck. Ray watches and asks what happened to the supplies. And he asks, "Where is Niles?" The employee gets scared and asks how he got in there. The ghost replies that the gate was open and asks again, "Where is Niles?" The employee says that he went to prepare for the war and that it's also dangerous, and he should leave. The protagonist tells him to inform Niles, but thinks he can't talk about the mana. And he tells him to be careful of the man with the monocle. On the bridge, the kids are all lying down to sleep. And Ray is sitting outside and asks if he doesn't think everything will be over in a week. Pale asks who he thinks will win. He replies that both groups are on equal footing and thinks that Niles needs to win for the sake of the kids. Because if Hector wins this war, the kids will be sold as slaves. Pale says that the war must have started. They notice something strange. Strange noises. The ghost realizes that something is wrong. Meanwhile, on 17th Street, the two members of Niles' team are shooting and are shocked that the golem hasn't taken a scratch. The golem attacks with a dark blue, frightening mana. They are thrown far away, causing serious injuries. The golem approaches and grabs them, then squeezes and eliminates them. The wizard says there's a smell of sewage and says that the golem did very well, and he calls him creation. And he says to clean this whole place up. Pale, on the bridge, notices that the noise is getting louder and holds on. Ray, asking where he's going, since this is different from usual, and if he's leaving, to let him go along. The ghost says no, and that he should wait there until the child approaches and asks why they are awake. The leader apologizes and says to come in, as they are about to leave. The protagonist calls him. Pale replies that everything is fine, and that he will stay with the kids, and they can't leave them alone. And he tells him not to go too far and to come back as soon as he finds out what's going on. He replies that everything is fine, and that he'll be back soon in another place. Ray notices that everything is on fire, and that people are being eliminated. He approaches one of our staff and asks what's going on there. The staff member recognizes the ghost and asks what's happening. He replies that they brought a golem with them, and the man with the monocle was controlling it and wasn't a match for them. And he tells the boy to run. The protagonist watches silently and takes something from the staff member. So, he grabs the sword and sees everyone eliminated and everything on fire. And he thinks that at this rate, Niles' group is going to lose and he needs to help them. At the same time, on the bridge, Pale is with a child. The lap, while the others are inside, all injured and taken out. The leader with the child is also injured, and he watches as the golem approaches and attacks. Tears stream down Pale's face, and he thinks that his partner shouldn't come back here. On 17th Street. In the central square, Ray watches and thinks that he arrived too late and that these are all the bodies of the men from Nyrus. But still, he can't see his body anywhere. None, meaning he must still be alive. Until an explosion happens nearby. He looks and realizes that this direction is where the children are. So, without thinking twice, he immediately runs and comes face to face with the golem. The ghost stands still for a moment, staring intently at the golem, and all around, everything is destroyed, with the ground covered in wounds. He keeps watching until he jumps down from up there with the sword in his hand, ready to defeat it. But the golem notices and attacks him first, causing injuries and throwing him far away, leaving the whole wall cracked. The protagonist, injured, thinks that he has to make sure everyone is safe until something comes to his mind from when he was leaving, and the children were running to him, urging him to come back quickly and not take too long. He watches and notices someone calling him and comes face to face with Pale, who says he didn't want him to come back. Ray stares intently at the bodies, all on the ground, and remembers when the leader was holding the child in his arms. And he comes across the bodies of Lorraine, Leia, Corden, Niles, Josephine, and Pale. His hands start to tremble, and he says that he still has to pay for what they did to him, and can't believe it. And he realizes that this sound was the same strange sound he heard during the battle. And then it was the golem that took out everyone, the children from the underground passage, the men from Nihilus, and all the people on that street. And he thinks he's going to avenge them all, and he has to move, trying to get up until a car arrives at the scene. The ghost watches as the car runs over the golem, causing a huge impact. Nyrus quickly opens the door and asks if he's okay, and runs over to him, and he says it doesn't look like he has any broken bones. And that's a relief. The protagonist calls out to him and talks about the children. The boss looks at them, all eliminated. He clenches his fist and apologizes, saying it was because he arrived too late. Ray asks why this would be his fault. Nyrus looks at him and hugs him. The ghost hugs him back and asks about his subordinates. He replies that they are all gone and insults Hector, saying he didn't think he would call in the outside mages. The protagonist asks what he's going to do. The boss replies that he's going to head back to the street and look for survivors, for now. However, he is interrupted as he is defeated by an attack. Ray watches, scared. The golem looks, and Niles has a hole in the middle of his body. The ghost keeps watching. The boss grumbles and falls onto the protagonist with serious injuries. Ray calls out to him and wonders what the hell happened. His heart starts to race and he begins to remember when he was learning to fight with him, when they were eating together, his smile, until he starts to emit a very strong mana all over his body. The golem tries to attack. The protagonist, with his enormous mana surrounding him, says he's going to eliminate all of them. He makes a motion with his hand, unleashing his magic. The golem emits a dark blue magic and Ray, an intense red one. The two attack at the same moment, creating a bright light. The attacks collide, while the ghost thinks that he is different from him, as he is a human with emotions. So, your magic becomes more intense than the opponent's magic. The magic covers the entire body of the golem. The protagonist looks around, sees the completely destroyed ground, and tries to wake the boss up, saying that he can't be eliminated. Niles tells him to stop shaking him because he's already in pain. And even though he thought he would never have a peaceful end, he didn't think it would be today. He thinks that he has no regrets, and has achieved a lot for someone who started out as a whiny little kid. And if he had tried a little harder, he wonders if things would have been different. He thinks that yes, and around the boy's age. Ray says he's going to get some medicine from the car, but the boss grabs his hand and tells him he should get out of that place and go somewhere better. And he always considered him like a little brother. He tells him to swim upstream and not get caught by the current, and insists that he can do it. Niles leaves something in his hand, the key. The ghost looks at his own hand and then stares at Niles, not knowing what to do, and thinks that rage and despair were the first emotions he felt in life. After a while, on the bridge, the protagonist wakes up feeling a bit sore, looks at his own hands and thinks it feels like he had a really long dream, just remembering what happened the day before. His emotions swirl in a turmoil almost like that time, and he feels that something is different. He stretches out his hand and activates his magic, and he thinks that the stronger the anger, the stronger the flame it conjures. So, the strength of your emotions really affects your magic. Until Ray feels a discomfort and thinks he might have overdone it. He becomes thoughtful about whether to move, gets up, and looks at the bodies. And he thinks that he needs to get revenge. He walks away, thinking whether it's something good or bad. On 17th Street, in Central Square, the bodies are being removed from the scene, and the survivors comment that Hector's group won. So life is going to get a lot harder. Meanwhile, the ghost watches Hector talking to someone from his team about whether Niles had heard him. The protagonist heads towards them immediately with a sword, until someone touches his shoulder, but he quickly turns around and starts hitting him, causing some injuries. The bald guy tells him to calm down. Ray realizes it's Humphrey and thinks that the whole Hector group needs to be eliminated. So, he keeps attacking. The bald guy wonders what insane moves these are, and he thinks that this kid wasn't that strong before and that he's going to lose at this rate. He tries to hold the kid. The ghost realizes that he gave him the shoulder. Humphrey grabs his shirt, throws him to the ground, and asks if he's really going to choose to be eliminated over something as trivial as revenge. And he calls him by name, saying that he has an offer. He's been watching you for a while, and that's why he wants you to listen. The protagonist looks and thinks about the silent Humphrey, who they call that because he's a quiet man, and he does his job perfectly. And he notices that Humphrey has a desperate expression and doesn't seem to want to deceive him. So, he asks what he wants. The executive replies that he wants him to leave the 50th sector. He asks why. Humphrey replies that he would like him to find his brother, whom Hector sold to the City of Wizards. And Hector said that if he worked for him for 10 years, he would tell him where his brother is, and that's why he's working for him. By this point, his brother must be the same age as the kid. The king asks why he should accept the executive. He asks if he knows how to use magic. He opens his shirt and shows the wound, saying he's sure after the fight at the warehouse. And even if he can use a bit of magic, he won't be able to win now. Hector, because he always keeps a scary wizard nearby. The ghost notices the dark mana of fear and realizes that he's sleeping. And then Humphrey says that that wizard is a demon, and that if someone makes him angry, he turns into a popsicle. And he even drowned a guy once, with a bubble of water. He's an extremely strong and cruel wizard and tells Ray to get out of there. For now, because he needs to survive and have a chance for revenge. The protagonist thinks that he's right, and that he never learned magic. He's just been using it intuitively. But on the other hand, your opponent is an expert. And the way things are, there's no chance at all. The bald man says he heard that the City of Wizards is somewhere up the Elton River, and that only wizards can enter there. He hands over a bag of money and says that's all the money he's earned in his life. And inside the bag, there's a piece of paper with his brother's name and characteristics. Ray asks why he's giving this money, and says that he can choose not to keep the promise. Humphrey replies that he knows him, and knows that he's not the type to break promises. And from what he saw, he's definitely skilled enough to enter a higher-level sector. And that he can... The ghost watches him. The executive says that the others will arrive there soon, and he needs to decide quickly. He replies that he has a condition, that he takes care of all the bodies under the overpass. Only then does he go after his brother. The bald man says he accepts. So, the protagonist tells him to wait for him, because he'll be back. Elsewhere, Ray is breathing heavily and looking around, realizing that no one followed him. So, are you going to the lady? And he says he has a question. He leaves a coin for her and warns that he's short on time and needs to be quick. Viola wants to know what the question is. The ghost asks if the story about the rainbow is true, that whoever finds a rainbow can make a wish. He remembers his brother saying that there's a rainbow somewhere in the sky, and the protagonist asking, "What is that?" His brother replies that it's a long, colorful band that appears after the rain, like a donut that's been eaten halfway, and that if you find the end of the rainbow, you can make a wish. Ray gets distracted thinking about something else. The brother asks if he can hear him, but still, the ghost remains distracted, and his brother gets very annoyed. Until the protagonist looks, waiting for the answer. The lady says that rainbows exist. You can make a wish or not. Ray watches and notices that there are no changes in her mana. It's a light purple, as always, and he can't tell if she's lying or not, but it's not without any basis. And he remembers the bald guy saying that the wizard came here looking for a rainbow and thinks that the wizard was also searching. And he's sure that they had proof of the existence of rainbows. He asks if by finding it, he could bring someone back to life, the eliminated ones. Viola asks who knows and says that any wish can come true. The ghost watches her. The lady says that no one knows where the rainbows are and that it's probably in a faraway place. The protagonist thanks her and says it would be good for her to move. In the outskirts of Sector 50, 20th 3rd Street, Ray is looking at the paper where Niles wrote down the location. In an abandoned building with a car next to it, he sees a white car and realizes he found it. He remembers his boss saying he would prepare a car, at least, and the ghost notices that he prepared a 4-door sedan. He is about to open the car when someone asks who he is, saying he looks like Niles's kid, and asks if he was ordered to bring the car. The man asks about the boss. The ghost thinks that he imagined he had thrown off all of Hector's men, and he can't waste any more time. So he opens the car door. The subordinate's eyes widen, and he asks where he thinks he's going, running to stop him. The protagonist quickly enters. The subordinate holds the door, preventing him from closing it, and tells him to leave it open. Ray thinks he used too much mana and his magic is failing, until he manages to emit a bright light. He aims at his opponent and hits him. Then, he kicks him. He starts the car, puts it in first gear to take off, steps on the gas, and drives away. He thinks that he is finally leaving the sector, 50. He keeps driving until he stops at a place full of old things, and the crow flies away. The ghost opens the trunk and says there's quite a bit of stuff, food and water, and that he's well prepared and won't make it to the next sector at this pace. He lights a campfire, sits down, and thinks he needs to find out more information about magic as soon as he gets to the next sector. And what you know is that there are 2 types of mana. Red mana can be used without particular preparation, and other mana requires colors to be combined. And mana can't be easily manipulated, but if you channel certain emotions, you can use a specific mana more easily. Rage. He just tries to think about the rage. So, the magic becomes much bigger and more intense. The protagonist thinks that this is his limit, and if he loses his focus on the emotions, his mana will disappear. So he's going to try combining. He starts making hand movements, emitting colorful magic that begins to grow stronger until it disappears. Ray thinks that types of mana that are not compatible repel each other. Combining colors requires a delicate effort, so you need to have a strong mental power. But, in return, there are combinations that are linked and work well together, and he wants to keep combining. And that wasn't necessary before, but things are different now. He watches and thinks that now he has a reason to do this. So the ghost keeps driving and stops to drink some water. Then he climbs on top of the car and starts combining mana, getting snow, another intense one, and stones, and thinks it's better to stop there. He lies on top of the car and wonders if he can pull it together, mana in a gentler way, and he thinks that if he can hold mana in his container and use it when he needs it, it will make the process more efficient, like the circles around that wizard's container. And he plans to research a way to do that as soon as he gets to the sector. 49. In Sector 50, 17th Street near the bridge, the subordinates are looking for something. The wizard asks if they haven't found it yet. The guard apologizes and says that if they wait a little longer, they'll be able to find the golem. He tells him to hold the tip. The subordinate gets scared, apologizes again, and asks for more time. The wizard replies that he doesn't like people who don't understand him. The guard trembles in fear and holds the tip. Then, he's attacked by magic, freezing his arm and then his whole body. The wizard pushes the frozen body to the ground and calls it useless, noticing that there's something there. A voice says it looks like the golem fought here and sees something that seems to be a piece of the golem too. The wizard looks to the side and notices that there's mana in the air and thinks it's a strong enough magic to still be lingering there. He walks and thinks he feels more mana and calls the subordinate, asking if anyone lives there. The subordinate replies that the street kids must live there. The wizard asks if they are orphans. He replies that the area is quite suitable for orphans and that they probably left to avoid the war. The wizard wonders if an orphan could really use this kind of magic. He smiles and starts laughing, wondering if an orphan from these streets used magic. And he discovered the infinitely small combination of elemental magic among the infinite combinations in the world on his own. And he thinks that this is impossible. And he says it seems like another wizard came here and destroyed the golem, and he orders them to find out what happened. The wizard thinks that in this small chance of an impossible happening, there must be a genius who can become an archmage like him, the world has never seen before. Then, the protagonist arrives at Sector 49 and remembers his birthplace, sitting with Niles, saying that the 42nd sector is like this place, it's a mess. And if I were to mention a difference, it's that it's bigger than the 50th sector. The buildings are taller, and there are more streets. It's the same for the lower sectors. The further up the river you go, the more dramatic the changes in scenery are. So in the In the 49th sector, Ray observes that it's huge. He looks to the side and sees children picking up old things and finds it strange, since there are no golems there, and wonders if they are only found in the 50th sector. He walks, and people talk to each other, and he notices that 36th Street has at least twice as many streets as the 50th sector, and he needs to keep walking. He needs to find more information as quickly as possible, especially about the wizard and his circles in the vessel, because that's going to be the key to his revenge. And he also needs to research prismatic colors and the city of wizards, and he needs a bit of money. He has the money that the bald guy gave him, but he doesn't know how long it's going to last. He notices something, and notices a place called Veronica's Bookstore. And he wonders about the name and thinks it sounds like a person's name. And he wonders, what is a bookstore? He remembers people arguing and levels being drawn in the sand, the sun, the river. And that this is brother, and that it was supposed to be repeated with the ghost. He thinks he knows how to read thanks to the boss. While observing, he wonders what that is, and says that he has never seen it before. And he notices that it's full of squares with letters on them. Someone suddenly shouts. A woman asks if it was him who broke the window and says that he's there to steal her books again and to get out of there. The protagonist touches and wonders if these are the books in the store. The woman, irritated, says that she won't repeat herself again and tells him to get out of there. He looks at her and notices the colors. Red, excitement. Yellow, joy. Blue, dark, discomfort. And dark green, irritation. And he wonders if it's possible to feel all those emotions at once. The woman shouts that the adults are coming down there and asks if he's still going to stay. He wonders what she's talking about. And he calls her weird. The woman gets even more irritated and asks what he just said, and if he knows who her grandfather is. Ray turns his back and thinks that now is not the time for this. He keeps walking and notices something. 3 children with a cautious look. And he thinks that this is expected, since he's a stranger walking through these streets. And they must think that he's there to provoke them. It's nothing different from the sector. Vimsu. In another place, the ghost is inside the car, thinking that he has walked through many streets, but hasn't discovered anything about magic. And he's going to need to explore more areas the next day until he hears something, and 3 boys are hiding, watching him. The protagonist thinks that finally they are here and feels that there are 4. The boys approach the door. The kids talk about just capturing him and not letting him scream or find the car keys, because it seems like there's food in the trunk. Inside the car, Ray grabs something, rolls down the window, and hits them. Their partners are outraged. So, the ghost goes after another one. The child looks scared, but still, the protagonist strikes her. The child starts screaming in pain. Ray watches and takes her out. The other boy approaches, about to attack. The ghost blocks, throws the tool away, and approaches the boy. With a cloth in hand, he tells him to bite down hard. The boy looks scared and screams in pain. After a while, in the same place, the kids are all seriously injured. The protagonist asks how many streets they have and tells them to answer. The boy with the beret watches. He replies that there are 3 in total. Ray asks which ones and looks deeply. The boy with the beret replies that they are from the 23rd to the 25th. The ghost observes his colors, which represent anxiety, restlessness, and fear, and hits him, saying that it's a lie. The boy with the beret apologizes. The protagonist looks at the other and tells him. The boy says he will tell everything, and reveals that they have 14 streets and 52 members in total. And their leader is Drenka, based in an abandoned factory, and he thinks they are bigger than he imagined. And he tells him to lift his head. He asks for the name, and the boy replies that it's on the ground. The ghost asks what orders the leader gave them. The boy replies that it was to hit him, even leaving him on the brink of the end, and steal all the food they had, and that the leader would be watching everything. Then, another guy jumps out of the car to attack him. The protagonist uses his magic and replies that he understood. He was being watched. They ask why the wind has appeared. Neshu thinks that the dust is getting into his eyes. The guy gets hit and falls to the ground with serious injuries. Ray tells him to tell his leader. He lifts his head and says that he is being watched. He heads towards the opponent and says that he's not the only one watching. Elsewhere, the ghost walks and realizes that the people there also know nothing about magic. He heard that books are bundles of paper containing various types of information written in them. So one of them must have information about magic until someone stops in front of him. 3 other boys ask if he can come with them and say that they're not there to fight. The protagonist asks if they are with the kid who came looking for him the day before. They respond that yes, and that he beat them almost to the end, and in a really cool way. And that's why the leader started to like him, because he's good at fighting. They talk among themselves about reading the paper that the leader sent, but they can't. Ray watches and takes the paper from their hands, saying that he will read it himself. They ask him if he knows how to read. The ghost replies that a little. They don't understand how he knows to read, since he's also from the streets. The paper says to work for him, as he will make sure that you will never feel hunger. They ask what is written on the paper. The protagonist asks how they chose the leader. They respond that it was through fighting, the strongest becomes the leader. Ray says he understood and calls them to meet their leader. In the abandoned factory, the base of Kedrick's group, one of them says that it's there. So, he opens the door and they walk in. At the place, they come across several of them. The leader, sitting down, says that then it's him. The ghost watches. Kedrick stands up and introduces himself. The protagonist also introduces himself and notices something strange and thinks that sometimes mana flowed from the trash. But he had never seen it flow from an object with so much mana before. The leader tells him to sit down and that he invited him, not as an enemy. Ray sits down and watches. His men watch him without stopping. The ghost thinks that he is making sure to express all his dominance. He is around his age, but his leadership is already quite proficient, which is why he says he likes seeing him in person even more. And he says that he has nerves of steel and asks where he's from. The protagonist replies that he is from Sector 50. Everyone looks surprised and comments if he's lying because they've never seen anyone come from Sector 50. They've heard of people coming from higher sectors, but they say it's very far away. And that means he drove all the way there by himself. The leader tells them to stop and says that if that's true, then he is more qualified to join the organization. Ray asks about the organization. Kedrick says that they are an organization and are planning to join a real organization. The name is Red Merc, a famous organization from Sector 45. He adds that they have an agreement to join their ranks as soon as they have 66 members and asks what he thinks about that. And if that's not a good enough reason to join the organization, he says it's an opportunity to raise his status. The ghost replies that it's a very interesting story. Joining a group isn't hard. The leader replies that, in fact, it's a wise decision. And as soon as he joins them, the protagonist says that he refuses to work for someone weaker than him. Everyone is watching him. The leader stares intently and asks if he just said that he is weaker than him. Ray says that back in Sector 50, leaders are determined by strength, not by talk. One of the boys runs towards him to attack, but Kedrick stops him and asks who let him speak. And it's known that he hates being interrupted. The boy apologizes. Then, the leader hits him with magic. The ghost watches and wonders if it's strengthening magic, and thinks it doesn't look like he's using magic, but that the mana is coming out of the ring and asks when this is going to end. The boy replies that he won't until one of them is eliminated. The protagonist thinks that he can break that ring. He watches the ring full of magic and the boy, who was being attacked, falling to the ground. The leader apologizes and says he got a bit nervous. Ray realizes that there was a sudden change in mood. Kedrick asks to continue from where they left off, saying that he was saying he was weaker. Ray thinks it's time to test and replies that yes, he is weaker. The leader tells him to fuck off and repeat what he said, asking if they also think he's stronger. The boys respond that no way. And who is the strongest here? The ghost realizes that the ring reacts to his emotions and thinks that, since it didn't react when the mana from the ring was cut off, so he doesn't know what the ring is doing, which is asking if he wants to see his strength. The protagonist responds that they should fight for the position of leader, and if he loses, he will work for him. The leader says to schedule the fight for a week from now, and everyone will be watching, including the guys and the other gangs. And that way, they'll be sure of who is the strongest. Ray asks where he got the ring. Kedrick replies that he'll find out if he defeats him, but that's not going to happen. The next day, the ghost remains curious about the ring, until he feels someone. Someone approaches and tries to attack him, but he manages to be quicker and blocks it. The children ask who gave him permission to walk there and say he must be crazy and shouldn't even think about running away, because this street belongs to them. The protagonist tells them to shut up and fight, and thinks that no matter where he goes, everyone wants to fight him. It must be because they know about the fight against the leader. And, Although his large gang is not attacking, the same does not apply to the others. Letting a stranger walk around unharmed hurts their pride, so they are forming alliances against him. And that's fine, according to the plan, because his magic gets stronger the more he gets used to it. He attacks the boys, throwing them far away, and thinks that he is casting spells faster and consuming less mana as he gains experience, and provoking these fights. It was a good choice. And aside from that, he asks how long he will keep watching. A guy with glasses observes and comments on his hair, gray, and his emotionless face. And he asks if he is the hunter, and waits for answers. Ray thinks that he is smaller than the others and doesn't seem good at fighting, but he's walking alone and finds that strange. And he tells him to take off his glasses, as they will hurt his hand when they break. The child says to wait, and claims that he didn't come to fight. The protagonist doesn't quite understand, so the boy with glasses says he's not a fighter, and asks how he would fight with this little body. Skinny Ray asks what he wants with him. The boy gets nervous and introduces himself as Philip and says he has an offer. Then they walk and the boy shows the way and says he works at the Eastern Dump and has heard many rumors about him. Wherever he goes, people are talking. The ghost realizes that he called him a hunter, as he is a stranger in the area. It seems he got that name after defeating those guys. They stop and Philip says that then. He opens the door and there are several people in the place, talking at the same time. The protagonist realizes that it is huge. The boy with glasses says to be welcome to his hotel. Ray says it looks like there are more than 100 people there. He replies that there are 186, including the guys working outside. The ghost says that everyone there has something in common. He asks if he noticed. The protagonist says it seems difficult. They join another group, or they are young, or they are small. He replies that it's true, and that he has sharp eyes. And there are several mines in the sector. Purinais. Ray asks if then several adults pass away. He replies that you can see, he's not just good at fighting, and says it's exactly because of that. There is a lot of work to do. Shops are willing to hire even children. And there are too many shops for the groups that manage the streets to handle. So, in exchange for obtaining a work monopoly with some groups, he agreed to pay them a small bribe and send workers if needed. He himself is a kind of agent and even provides shelter. The ghost asks if he created everything by himself. He replies that yes, and that he worked hard to set up all the infrastructure. Until a boy arrives. Philip realizes it's the child and asks how the work at the restaurant is going. He replies that it's great, and that no one bullies him while he's working. And there is the rent for the month. Jonathan leaves. The owner notes that the rent has been collected, and says he had to write it down immediately, and that the notebook is related to the hotel's management, and asks if he wants to take a look. Then, Ray flips through the notebook and notices that something is written about him, and to be very careful. He says that he investigated him a lot. The boy with glasses asks if he knows how to read. He replies a little. Philip apologizes and says he likes to observe people. He responds that it's the opposite and he wouldn't understand, even if he tried, and that there's no need to apologize, because it doesn't bother him. The owner breathes a sigh of relief in another location. They arrive where there are two men, and one of them seems to know Philip and says he knows they can't let just anyone in. The boy with glasses says he's the hunter everyone is talking about, and that he said he would bring him as a guest. The two guards look startled and let him in. The owner says this is the place he uses, and that he can feel at home. The ghost says that when he first saw him, he thought he was a swindler. Philip says he doesn't lie, and that credibility is the most important thing in business, and you can always recover money. But when you lose credibility, it will be difficult, the recovery. The protagonist thinks they don't seem to be the same age and asks about the proposal he had. The boy with glasses thinks it's still a bit scary, but he has to overcome it if he wants to profit there. He looks and responds that he has a genuine proposal and says to become his business partner. When he defeats Kedrick and becomes the new leader, there is a moment of silence. Ray observes and notices that he has less dark mana than before, and wonders if he was afraid and is now overflowing with courage, and asks if he doesn't think he might lose. He replies that he can't rule out that possibility, but he has a high probability of winning. The ghost asks why he thinks that. The owner responds that it's a hunch, and that he likes to observe people. When he observes behavior and habits, he can get a good idea of what a person is like. For example, When he talks to someone, he has the habit of lowering his gaze and looking at people's chests instead of their eyes. But he doesn't know the reason, and wonders if he has some trauma related to someone's eyes or face. He gets to the point and says he has a good eye for people. The protagonist asks what other habits he has noticed, and how many of them. He replies that he has a few more, like always stepping with his right foot when he's about to turn a corner. Maybe because he is unconsciously preparing for the possibility of encountering an enemy, since he is right-handed and also has a way of fighting. Ray thinks it's his first time seeing such a specific and well-detailed analysis, and that, until now, people have seen him superficially, saying he was scary and that something was not right and that there was something wrong. They saw him as cold and frightening, and until now, apart from anger and sadness, he has to concentrate to feel emotions and wonders if it seems like a hint on how he can grow emotionally. Philip continues talking about Kedrick, that he has the habit of getting carried away by emotions in a fight, while he seems to fight by reading the opponent's movements and making precise calculations. He believes that Ray's chance of winning is high. The ghost responds that he accepts. The boy with glasses says he hasn't even finished explaining yet. He responds about his payment, or he will handle it himself and not take it lightly. The owner replies that of course. The protagonist says he has a condition and that he seems to have many connections there. So, he needs him to find something. 2 days later, he is sitting on a bench near his car and there is someone under the car, asking if it's true that he came from Sector 50. The mechanic, still under the car, comments that, looking at the state of the vehicle, he imagines it crossed the desert with it. And it seems that Philip liked him, as it's rare for him to send people. He asks for the wrench and a nut, because the Reeves screw and beta came loose. The ghost uses his magic to grab the things he needs without touching them, placing them beside him. The mechanic is puzzled and asks if he had taken them before, while the protagonist remains thoughtful, saying nothing. After a while in the same place, the mechanic comes out from under the car and says it's ready, except for the fact that the engine overheats sometimes. But he replaced the coolant with something much better, so it should be less troublesome now. He says that he secretly brought the coolant from the place where he works, and it was the most expensive one. Ray responds that the mechanic did a good job along with his tools and says that no payment is needed, because all of this is due to Felipe's request, their savior. He explains that if it weren't for Felipe, they wouldn't even be able to work, and that's why they didn't mind giving a portion of the earnings. The ghost thinks that this guy is quite popular. The mechanic takes a sheet of paper and hands it over, saying that Felipe sent it because he wasn't going to memorize the message and asked to deliver it. The protagonist observes the paper and remembers when he said he needed information about magic. The owner said he would gather some information and pass it on without delay, as he wasn't well known, wandering the world aimlessly. Then, Ray gets into the car, looks at the paper, and thinks he didn't imagine he would be able to get so much information in 2 days. The paper says that on 2nd Street, Wolf from the Wolf's Bakery, 42 years old, baker, man, was carrying a heavy bag in his hand. Street, 8. Andrew, from the store, 23 years old, clerk, man, ate dry bread without showing any expression. Until he notices something, stares intently, and thinks it's worth checking out. Meanwhile, the employee is carrying 2 boxes of food. The ghost observes and thinks that Lennon is an outcast and doesn't even have a ring on his chest. And with that, only one remains. He reads the information about when a pipe accidentally fell from above. The pipe fell onto the ground because a strong wind pushed it, and the man avoided getting injured by seconds and did not show surprise at the situation. The protagonist thinks there is a great chance he is a wizard, until he notices something. 2 people are in front of the place, commenting about it being closed and not opening anymore. They talk about how they will endure throwing stones there every day and got what they wanted. They said they would pay double if they sold the place and can't stop now. They are going to throw the stone on the 2nd floor, which is not the store, but the house. To make them leave, the boy positions himself to attack the stone, and the redhead shouts for them to leave, as she heard everything. And she knows that the brats throwing stones are them. She uses threats and orders them to run away from there. The king observes and thinks that yellow, of course, means courage and conviction. But, seeing that there is a black girl filling the spot, you can tell that she is feeling threatened. The 2 boys ask if they think they will run away because she is trembling with fear. And they say it must be nice to have a house and that she should have pity and leave. The redhead tells them to shut up, but even so they throw the stone. They ask if she thinks they don't know that inside there it's just her and a sick old man. The redhead remains nervous and curses at them. Ray watches. The two boys say that this time the stone will hit her face. Then the ghost watches intently as she uses her magic to prevent the stone from reaching her. They ask what that was. The redhead, with her hand extended, realizes it worked. The protagonist wonders if she is a mage. While the two boys are confused about what happened and comment that it must have been their imagination. They try again. Ray thinks that it was clearly magic, and the redhead tells them to get out of there. Soon, the boys continue threatening and throw the stone again. The redhead closes her eyes and thinks she can't block everything. Then, the ghost uses its magic, preventing the stone from hitting. The boys can't understand and think it's because it's too windy. The stone hits one of them in the face. The partner is confused, and when he goes to check if his friend is okay, he ends up getting hit too. The protagonist approaches with a stone in hand, looks up and says, "It's been a while." While the boys are elsewhere complaining about pain, the redhead thanks for the help. Ray responds that it's not necessary and wants to clear up a doubt. Both ask at the same time about magic and stare at each other. The redhead asks if he wants to talk inside. Then, they go inside, and she introduces herself as Veronica, and the ghost also introduces itself. The redhead apologizes for having yelled at him last time, as she thought he was also going to stone her. The protagonist responds that it's all right. She thanks him for helping at that moment and says she would have been in trouble if it weren't for him. Ray says there's no need to thank him, that he just wanted to take a look at the bookstore and thinks he just wanted to gain more magical knowledge. But finding a mage is better than expected. Veronica wonders if people don't usually like compliments very much. The two sit down and the ghost asks where she learned magic. She replies that it was her grandfather who taught her and her siblings. The protagonist asks if the grandfather also knows how to use magic. She replies yes, and that he is a mage king. He asks if he can meet him. She responds yes, but that she needs to go up to speak with him first, and mentions that he has an injury on his ear. The ghost replies that there are no problems. The redhead is worried about the injury getting infected, so she helps take care of it. Using magic on the injury that is sleeping and being healed, Veronica says it's ready. The protagonist is surprised and stands up, asking how she did that, saying that she just manipulated white mana and used it to create a light and heal. He thinks that no matter how much he concentrates, he has never been able to use white mana, as it only reacts when someone is kind and gentle or when someone sacrifices themselves. And all these emotions are beyond him. The redhead says she just used healing magic and asks what he means by white mana. Ray remembers Nyrus talking about mana being invisible and thinks that not even mages can see it. Veronica doesn't understand much about white mana and asks if he means the element of regeneration. She explains that it is used in the magic she just applied, and that normally, healing magic only uses this single element, but it is possible to add 2 or more auxiliary elements. The ghost asks how many elements exist. She replies that they are mages, and there are more than 20 just counting the natural ones, including amplification, interference, manipulation, and regeneration. There are at least 100 elements. The protagonist wonders if he can learn more from her grandfather, and asks if he is on the 2nd floor. She replies yes, but he is very ill, so he can't get out of bed most of the time. She asks if he can wait while she checks if her grandfather is awake. She goes upstairs and says she'll be right back. Meanwhile, Ray is taking a look at the books and thinks he heard that books are very expensive. Touching them with these hands will only lower the price. And the last time he took a bath was during a natural rain, as he doesn't mind bad smells. But others do. He wonders if the girl's sense of smell is bad or if she just endured the smell. Until he becomes interested in something and says those don't seem to be books, but diaries. He notices that they are studies on elemental distribution by sector, and another talks about the reasons behind the expansion of the black rain. Veronica comes down the stairs, but she doesn't see him and asks if he left because she took too long. The ghost behind her says he's still there. The redhead is startled and comments that he was taking a look around the store and thinks she had no idea he was behind her. The protagonist asks if there are books about magic. She asks if he can read and check the titles. He responds that he can. Veronica thinks he's more interesting than she imagined. Ray asks about her grandfather. She replies that he is sleeping and asks if he can come back the next day. He responds that he can and goes to open the door until she calls him and asks the reason for wanting to meet her grandfather, saying it seemed to be his goal from the beginning. The ghost says nothing at the moment. He opens the door and says he is looking for the prism. In another place, in the afternoon, at a restaurant, the protagonist is observing the data on the paper about the times the man leaves and enters. He returns with a basket full of food and goes downstairs. He thinks that the man resides right across, and with luck, he will be able to get some information about magic. Ray keeps observing the paper, with Johnny's information, until the attendant arrives with his order. And he realizes that it's Johnny. He comments that he didn't order that. Johnny responds that it's on the house, because he must be the hunter, and now is a hero to the children. The ghost says he has a question. Johnny says he can ask whatever he wants. He thinks that maybe he shouldn't go too far and asks how precise that man's routine is. The attendant responds that it's almost 100%. And, for the last 3 months he worked there, he saw that man leave and return to the building's basement at exact times. And he almost didn't need to look at the clock thanks to him. Until a voice asks, "Why are you stalling?" Johnny apologizes and says he has to go. Then, he returns. The protagonist notices on the clock that it's almost time, and he will have to wait. After a while, he finishes eating and drinks the juice. He observes something and encounters a man who has rings like that wizard with a monocle, and concludes that he must be a wizard. Then, he runs off and says it was an honor to serve him. He thinks that the man is out of the house for about an hour, and he has to find clues about magic in that house. During that time, Ray continues walking and tries to open the door, but realizes it's locked and thinks he can't back down there. He needs to find a way to get in. He notices something with the mana and wonders if it's reacting. He notices that it's flowing into the lock. The mana enters the lock and ends up opening the door. The ghost wonders how he did that and thinks he can't back down, and he can't think about it now. Then, he looks around and thinks that the important thing is to find information about the wizard. He starts opening papers, where it's written about the intense flame of his life. And he wonders if it's a letter that man was writing. He reads about the red injury stone that was given to him, and that makes him stronger, mentioning that he dug up to the 66th. The protagonist remembers Kedrick, saying he promised to shelter them with the requirement of 66 people, and he wonders if this is the executive from Merkrid he was talking about. Judging by the content of the letter, he concludes that he was expelled from the organization. Until he notices something, a strange sensation coming from a pot. Then, he opens it and finds several red jewels. Ray thinks that this is the same jewel that was embedded in Kedrick's ring, and must be the red injury stone mentioned in the letter. He notes that it is still the same mana, but unlike the mana in the air, this jewel can attract it much more smoothly. He wonders what would happen if he used magic with it. Then he tries to use the magic, achieving a very intense flame, a flame redder than usual. He thinks that it would normally take more time to conjure the magic. Is someone approaching? The ghost wonders if he has already returned, as it hasn't even been 15 minutes. The man enters complaining that he forgot his wallet and is getting dumber by the day. And that's why the boss abandoned him. He says not to worry, because when everything is over he will be able to return to the organization. He mentions that he needs to buy more food than usual so he doesn't have to go out for a while. The protagonist, hidden behind the door, realizes that he is leaving again. The man comments that it seems like there's one more thing to buy. He looks behind the door and says he also needs rat poison and asks if he thought he wouldn't notice he was hiding there. Ray hits him. The man steps back with his hand on his face, injured, and asks who he is. He says he thought it was the organization's eliminators, but seeing that it's just a boy, he realizes the injury is affecting his eye. He asks how he managed to unlock the door. The ghost thinks about subduing him and making him reveal everything he knows, until he realizes that the man blocked his attack. Asking if he dares to challenge an adult and even point a weapon, he questions why he is so strong. The protagonist manages to grab his weapon and push. He realizes it's terrorism. The man focused his mana in his hand, which was holding the blade, and used magic to foresee that he would be injured. The man grabs a hook and says he caught him because he is a child. Then, he approaches to attack. Ray observes the magic and wonders if he can do it too. When the man is about to attack, he stops for a moment and asks how he is able to use that magic. The ghost thinks he clearly remembers the color combination and the proportion that the man used. The man doesn't understand what's happening, as he says that metallization is a unique magic that he invented himself. He continues to attack, very thoughtful, while watching the boy. The protagonist attacks him, inflicting a serious wound on the opponent's stomach. The man groans in pain, starting to bleed heavily on the ground. He crouches down and says he was right, that the boss must have sent him there. He comments that he heard there's someone among the eliminators who can copy magic, until Ray attacks his hand and thinks he needs to lower his voice to hide his identity. He says he has many questions to ask and orders him to answer them. The man says he never imagined that the rumored eliminators would be so young. The ghost thinks he knows, from his own experience, that it's hard to talk to people like that. And if he can't get any information, it might be better to eliminate him. The man says he will make sure the boss has no choice but to acknowledge his abilities and promises to burn him to the ground. Then, he starts to unleash a terrifyingly powerful magic and tells Ray to inform the boss that Walter, the Blood Eye, will be paying a visit soon if he makes it out of there alive. He says that the boss must be regretting abandoning him. The protagonist realizes that the mana is rotating intensely, and because of this, the red mana is rapidly dispersing throughout his body through the blood vessels. He thinks that this is dangerous, and if he hadn't protected himself with mana, it would have been even worse. Walter continues with his terrifying mana and asks if he is there to retrieve the red bloodstone. He says to try to eliminate him then. Ray starts using his magic to defend himself against it. Walter starts to say that it's good he can use magic of this caliber, even to try to eliminate him, and continues attacking. Asking if the king only plans to defend himself, the ghost realizes he can't get close to him because he's surrounded by flames. And this protection won't last long, until he looks scared. Seeing that his opponent's magic is more intense and he can't block it, he decides that first he will extinguish the fire. Walter asks if he took off the protection and if he's crazy, getting confused, not saying much until he realizes that his flame is starting to diminish. He asks if Ray used two main types of magic at the same time. Then, the protagonist uses his water magic and clenches his fists. Walter doesn't understand how he's doing all of this. Ray's magic intensifies, forming a huge amount of water and extinguishing his fire. So, Ray walks to another place and notices that his nose is hurt. Side effect of using magic at the limit of your mental capacity. As he walks, he continues to think about Walter's firepower, about how the mana rings move smoothly and the speed of the colors blending was faster. He thinks that man was very powerful, and he can't even imagine the strength of the wizard with the monocle. He concludes that he won't be able to fulfill his revenge with the strength he currently has. However, with enough time, he believes he will be able to get much stronger. And he thinks that if he had known things would end up this way, he would have taken all the jewels. The next morning, at the bookstore, is someone coming? The redhead notices that it's the protagonist and asks if he changed his clothes, since he was wearing a raincoat. And he replies that he got rid of it. And he thinks that even though Walter didn't see his face because it was dark, he could recognize the clothes if he was still wearing them. Veronica says she talked to her grandfather about magic and about him looking for the rainbow. He asks if she told him anything else, and she replies that she didn't. Then, the ghost notices something and comes across two kids watching and making faces. Closing the door, the redhead says they are her siblings, whom their grandfather brought from the orphanage, and that he accepted her along with the two. The protagonist asks if it was to teach magic. She asks how he knew. Ray replies that he didn't think there would be another reason and ended up saying that he learned magic from his grandfather. Veronica realizes that it's true. So they walk and she says that their grandfather is there. When they enter, the redhead introduces the boy and tells her grandfather that it was him who helped them. The ghost watches. The man asks if she can leave them alone for a moment. The girl leaves and the two are left alone. Gryan says that he has his gratitude and that he heard he helped his granddaughter get rid of the kids, something he should have done himself, but he's not in the best shape. Ray replies that it wasn't difficult at all. He stares and notices that the old man has 4 rings, red for anger, orange for comfort, yellow for excitement, green for shame, blue for indifference, and dark blue for sorrow. He concludes that these are emotions that would be hard to feel all at once. So, that's not sorrow. But yes, colors recorded in the container, with the countless ripples and marks left by emotions over the years. He continues to think that it's difficult to read emotions of this kind and says he has been looking for a wizard for a long time. The gentleman comments that, according to his granddaughter, he has been using magic quite skillfully, but he doesn't know much about him. He asks where he is from. And he comments that it seems like there's a long story. If you find it difficult to answer the question, they can play a game, where the winner of each round can ask the loser something. The protagonist observes attentively. The old man says that his quick reaction proves he has sharp senses and asks if he feels the mana between them at that moment. Ray responds that yes, and he thinks that not only can he feel it, but he can also see it. Grion notices that Ray's atmosphere has completely changed and explains that each magic uses a different element. When the elements meet, they can create new ones. He says that the element between them now is the maintenance element, necessary for the magic to maintain homeostasis without being impacted by external factors. He comments that, because of this homeostasis, it is the most difficult element to handle. The ghost asks about the element besides it. The gentleman asks if he can feel both. The protagonist responds that yes, and thinks that there is a gray and a darker gray. The old man puts his hand on his head and asks how this is possible. He thinks that he didn't need to visit hundreds of orphanages, since Ray identified the maintenance and continuity elements immediately. Something that an ordinary mage wouldn't be able to do. He comments that he doesn't have much time left to live, but even so, he found a true talent. Ray asks about the name of the element. Besides the maintenance one, Graham responds that it wouldn't be fun to tell so easily, and says for him to win the game and find out. He explains that it's simple. There is a sphere made of two different elements, among them, and he must try to pull the sphere. As soon as it reaches someone's hands, the game ends. The sphere can be placed closer to him at the start, to be fairer. The ghost thinks it would be difficult to win against a more skilled wizard. But because of this disadvantage, he has a chance. Then, he says to start. The old man announces the start of the game. The protagonist uses his magic until he is surprised by something. The sphere quickly went to the old man, and he is surprised and thinks that he is fast. Then, Brian says he will clear the first doubt and asks from whom he learned magic. He replies that he is self-taught. The old man says he is surprised that he achieved so much in a single day, and asks if a self-taught wizard is very rare. He replies that he will only say if he wins the game. The ghost says to start, then the protagonist says he couldn't do it. The old man says he won again, and that the result of this competition depends solely on the person's ability to handle mana. Ray thinks that only he is giving information, and that this way he won't achieve anything. He needs to use a different method. Grian says to continue. Then, both try to grab the sphere with magic. The ghost's other hand is also using magic. The old man observes something and says it seems like he changed the tactic. The protagonist, with the sphere in hand, says that there is no rule saying he can't harm the opponent. The old man tells him to state his doubt. Ray asks what mana is. Grian explains that mana is the most fundamental element with which all things in the world are constructed, and it cannot be seen or touched. But, like lightning, fires, or mist, it is possible to observe its movements through secondary phenomena. Additionally, a very small number of humans are born with the sensory ability to perceive mana. However, being able to perceive it does not mean one is able to use it. This is because the talent to use mana and to manipulate it are entirely separate domains. The ghost asks about the talent and if he means the ability to manipulate mana. The old man thinks it was a second question, but lets it slide and answers yes. He explains that this refers to the ability to separate the individual elements that compose mana and combine them in the correct proportions. Those who understand themselves tend to have great talents, like mages. Magic is a discipline of inner exploration, hence the saying, waves of mana for those who are honest with themselves. The protagonist repeats the phrase. In the next round, the old man realizes he couldn't catch the sphere. The maintenance element is considered the most difficult to handle. But even so, Ray is learning how to deal with it by understanding its characteristics in real time. The old man asks what the next question is. Ray says he would like to know about the rings that mages have in their hearts. The old man explains that you can think of them as containers that hold mana. The mana in the air automatically accumulates inside the rings created after a single refinement. The distribution of the elements in this process will differ, depending on the wizard's constitution. The ghost asks if the refining process makes mana easier to use than air mana. He replies that yes, but there is also another important reason for this process. There's no problem using air mana a few times, but if it's done constantly, it can cause mana poisoning. Usually, the reaction comes immediately. After a wizard uses air mana, they might feel dizzy, sleepy, unable to stop laughing or crying due to sorrow. Some may experience low tolerance to anger. The symptoms of mana poisoning differ among individuals, and if these symptoms accumulate, they can develop into a permanent mental illness. The protagonist wonders if this emotional mana can affect each other, and thinks that using unrefined mana might make him hysterical. This explains why he was free from mana poisoning, as until recently he couldn't feel emotions. Ray says that if someone could use air mana while being immune to mana poisoning, that person would have a huge advantage. The old man replies that this is quite a unique idea, but he has never seen a person like that before. If it existed, it would be incomparable to wizards who can only use refined mana for safety, since there is an infinite amount of mana in the air. And he asks if he has a dream. The ghost asks if it's like the dreams he has when he sleeps. The old man replies that he is not referring to what he would like to become in the future. The protagonist says that there is someone he wants to eliminate, and someone he wants to save. Grion says that he has heard many people talk about the first part, but this is the first time there has been a second. He asks if he would like to learn magic. The ghost looks surprised and wonders why a wizard with 4 rings would want to teach a street orphan. He thinks that he doesn't understand the purpose and wonders if he wants something from him. The old man says that he doesn't want anything from him. The ghost stays quiet for a moment and then replies that it's okay and that he would like to learn. The old man watches and says that his granddaughter can come in. Veronica opens the door and says she wasn't trying to eavesdrop. He replies that he knows very well what kind of person she is. And he asks if she remembers why he accepted her and her 2 brothers into the orphanage. She replies that it's to leave knowledge as a legacy. Grion says that's right, and that this is part of his knowledge, so she should listen carefully. He starts talking about the rainbow that the boy was looking for. He says that this is a story that has been passed down from generation to generation since ancient times, and that even now, there are many people wandering the world looking for it. There are hundreds of theories, but they all converge to one point. Whoever finds the rainbow will be able to become a godlike entity. The redhead asks, "What is a god?" He replies that they are all-powerful beings, capable of bringing anything and everything they want into this world. The protagonist now understands why the monocle-wearing wizard is searching for the rainbow. The redhead says, "So," but is interrupted by the window breaking. Veronica gets startled, and just as a stone is about to hit her, a hand defends her. It's Ray's hand. The redhead watches the floating shards of glass and wonders if it's wind magic. The ghost watches and thinks that he clearly left a warning by leaving his arms. Useless. But they still want to continue with the mission to attack the store. He watches them through the broken window. 2 people are running. The man thanks Ray for saving his granddaughter and says that he should be doing this, but he is physically unable. He asks Veronica to heal the boy's injury. Veronica uses her magic and says that it will heal quickly. He thinks it's just a scratch and wonders if he really needs her tears. She replies that there will be a scar on his skin if you don't do that. The protagonist thinks that scars are quite useful and doesn't see them as a bad thing. The old man tells her to stop using magic before she creates a circle, as it seems she's been using too much mana from the air. Ray says he heard that they've been throwing stones there for quite a while, about a month or so, and he thinks they're doing it at someone's request. The man says that there is someone making offers to buy the store, so it's very likely to be that person. The ghost asks if he intends to sell the store. Grion replies that no, and says that this situation is becoming unbearable. He explains that it's been 6 months since he opened the bookstore, and it was meant to train his disciples and finish the research he dedicated his whole life to. He remembers his grandchildren congratulating him for opening the bookstore and him picking up the flower. You continue to say that you were very satisfied with this lifestyle, and he could find children and welcome those who needed books. However, his granddaughter has been managing the store in his place because of his illness, and if he passes away things could get worse, as there would be no easier target than her. What about a store, just with kids? The redhead keeps picking up the shards of glass, and the old man says that he might have to sell the place and look for a suitable home for the kids. Veronica shouts that she can't sell the store because this place is where her dreams are, and he said he wanted to manage a bookstore since childhood. Grion thanks for the consideration, but says that not everything works the way we want in this world. She replies that she still doesn't want to close the store and doesn't want to see her grandfather disappear. He calls her with tear-filled eyes and says that it seems like he has put too many burdens on her. The protagonist watches as it starts to rain. The old man ends up falling asleep, and the redhead explains that he has a rare disease called eternal sleep disease, which started 2 months ago. His sleeping period keeps getting longer and longer, until he never opens his eyes again. He can no longer move and only stays awake for 2 or 3 hours a day. She asks if Ray can come back tomorrow, because normally he is awake. In the morning, she hands him her raincoat and says she'll see him the next day, then opens the door and remembers her brother crying. He thinks that, even though he can't relate to other people's sadness, he knows some ways to comfort them, and he tells Veronica not to worry, that everything will be okay. The redhead looks at him, her eyes fill with tears, and she thanks him. Then the ghost leaves the store and wonders where they went. He thinks that the 8th Street where the bookstore is located is Jaffer's gang territory, and those kids from that day must be from there too. He wonders if they went back to the hideout because of the black rain, and thinks that he was planning to deal with Jaffer, but it seems like he's going to have to change his plan. So he starts running, and he thinks he will have to look for Philip. First, since he's connected to other gangs, he could probably set up a meeting with Jaffer, until he notices something and quickly hides when he sees 4 people. He wonders what the Breaker gang is doing there. The boys comment that he'll have to do this until morning. The protagonist glances over and realizes that inside the container is Breaker. And inside with him, Ray keeps watching as Breaker is hitting Felipe and insulting him. So, he clenches his fist to hit again, but notices something and doesn't quite understand. The ghost breaks down the door after defeating all of his men, and Breaker, who knows him, asks if he's also dealing with that guy. The ghost wonders if Philip passed out and thinks that, even though he has no loyalty to his business partners, Philip has helped him a lot, and he will pay back what he received. He steps forward and thinks that this is the rule. Kedrick says that he is really impatient and that the duel is the day after tomorrow, and he asks if he wants to fight now. The protagonist looks and realizes that Kedrick is different, and that the mana in his container and ring is bigger and much clearer than last time, as if he had grown. Meanwhile, Rai says that he's not there to fight, just to find out what's going on and why they're doing this. He wants to ask if the two know each other and if he went to see him while also offering a strange proposal. He says that all Philip knows how to do is flatter strong guys and that he gets sick just by watching him. So he looks for a way to keep attacking. The unconscious boy comes, gets picked up and thrown away. Kedrick watches and tries to hold himself up to not fall. He approaches again, with his fists clenched and mana swirling around. The ghost notices the approach and blocks. The two stare at each other. Kedrick tells him to stay out of it because it's none of his business. The protagonist wants to know why he's doing that. Kedrick asks what the reason is for continuing to question, and he claims that he's already talking. He can't stand seeing weak people. Ray asks if he hates weak people. The tough guy replies that he hates them to the point of appreciating them. The ghost says that this is not a reason to harm someone. Kedrick punches the wall, leaving it cracked, and says that if he loses, it's over for him. Like Philip, he's going to show what happens when someone infringes on his territory. The protagonist looks without changing his expression and thinks that if he uses the gem, he could easily resolve the situation, but he can't take the risk because he doesn't know what side effects it might cause. And he said that his head isn't working right, and that if he wants an example, there's a better way. His opponent pretends not to understand, repeating the same thing, telling him to stop with the nonsense. The ghost said that from what it seems, it is. He's planning to eliminate Philip, but he asks, what's the point of that if no one is around to see it? And he suggests, what would he do in front of everyone? He asks if it wouldn't be more effective. What is it that you're thinking for a moment? And he agrees, saying, what about that? It's not a bad idea. The protagonist suggests that if they're going to have the duel day, it would be better because all the strong ones from Sector 49 will be there. He wants to respond that it's a decent idea, and asks what they would do if Philip ran away. Ray responds that he takes responsibility and will take him. Kedrick watches and says that Ray doesn't seem like the kind of person who breaks promises. But he warns, if you let the boy with glasses escape, you'll eliminate him in his place. Then, he leaves the place. The ghost watches and runs to see how Philip is doing. The owner groans in pain. The protagonist realizes that he is in very bad shape. Elsewhere, someone knocks on a boy's door. He wonders who it could be at this hour. He opens the door and asks if he doesn't know they close on rainy days, until he is surprised to see Ray with the boy and glasses in his arms, asking for help.